So hello fellow Earthlings. This is Earthling 6455463728. And what I wanted to talk today about is basically, will China and US go to war the way so many people seem to think, based on historical data, that they will at some point. Certainly many people in the US seem to have that in mind. And the answer, I think, at least from my point of view, is no. And I think that it's really, really unlikely. And one of the reasons why I think that might be the case is, let's look at what would happen if they did go to war. So naturally, with I think something along the lines of 11 aircraft carriers compared to I think there might be 2 or 3 others in the world. I think China might own one, which would be a refurbished one from the Soviet Union. Obviously, China would lose really badly. On a conventional weapon scale, definitely. I don't think China even has enough ports to send out enough ships to even try to contest with the US. The US has, ports on either coast that they could send, just get all the ships out of the Atlantic, send them over to the Pacific. The US has thousands and thousands of nuclear weapons. If that ever got to be the case, which seems ridiculous since China has maybe 200 and something nuclear weapons. But let's just see what the war would look like afterwards. All of the money that China has invested in all of their infrastructure would be for nothing. It would be destroyed to some level. And that means that China's efficiency in manufacturing would be gone. As a result of that, it means that the US would not be able to get many of those products that are only made in China at this point. I think there's a lot of antibiotics. So how is that going to work? The US is going to destroy part of its antibiotic supply based on between India and China. That does not make any sense at all. In terms of manufactured goods, the US would be destroying the place where most of its manufactured goods are, well, not most, I don't know. Many, an overwhelming number of its manufactured goods are manufactured. So beyond their own citizens having stuff, their companies that create stuff for the rest of the world, they would be out of a place to manufacture these things as well. Also, the Chinese people probably wouldn't be interested or have the means or funds to buy US goods. So how would that work out? The US wouldn't have manufacturing. Let's say they get everything to be manufactured in the US again. That's going to jack up the prices of everything. And China, as an enormous market, is probably not going to be buying stuff from the US. I guess the US could decide that they want to take over China, put a whole bunch of bases in China like they might have done with Germany or Japan, I suppose. But one of the largest markets in the world would be gone. So, and whatever it is that the US makes, the Chinese people probably would not be able to afford it. So it would be devastating, certainly for China, but definitely for the US and US companies that wanted manufacturing. And yeah, manufacturing jobs might come back to the US, but a lot of these manufacturing jobs are very environmentally hazardous. And that's why many of them were exported. So it's not really going to be a good thing at all. And in any way, shape, or form that you take it, it's not going to be a good thing. I can't imagine any country in the world supporting the US aggression to China, against China. I don't see that. And I can't imagine China actually deciding that they want to fight the US. That doesn't make any sense. That it's like, did Iraq want to fight the US? I don't think so. Did Afghanistan want to fight the US? I don't think so. So it really comes down to whether or not the US decides that they're going to do it. And aside from ruining their own environment by bringing back a lot of these manufacturing jobs, a lot of their people are going to be out of work for whatever they produce in terms of services that China consumes. Everybody in the world is going to be upset at the US in terms of these products that are no longer going to be available because China can't manufacture them anymore. So it seems really, really unlikely that this go around we're going to have a war based on the US and China. In terms of, we had a similar thing to the Spanish flu happening. We might end up with, a depression as a result of COVID-19, in a similar way that there was a depression in 1928, 29, around thereabouts, and whatever might have happened as a result of the Spanish flu. But yeah, I don't really see that happening. Now, in terms of who is going to win out on this, is it that there are some projections that China's population growth is going to stall before they can become the largest economy in the world. And that might be a possibility. Right now, China, because of Trump's threats with respect to everything, with respect to trade, with respect to the virus, with respect to sanctions because of the Uyghurs and Hong Kong, and Trump says that China has monetary, just bad things monetarily. I think like they supposedly are artificially depressing the value of the renminbi. Yeah, I think they're currency manipulator, may be what he alleged. But I think that unfortunately China would have hit something of a wall in terms of its growth of its economy, as a result of perhaps doing certain things in terms of letting its market and its economy overheat. But I think that it's hard to stop the momentum that they already have. Because for one thing, at least based on how the two different countries are managing this pandemic, we see that the US is really running on bravado, and China seems to be, and many countries in that region, from Vietnam to Taiwan, Singapore, there is no argument about get us back to work. I have not seen any demonstrations like that. Obviously people can't really protest as much in China, but South Korea overwhelmingly re-elected their leader based on how he made Korea look in terms of the relatively low number of infections and deaths. Taiwan definitely handling it well. Japan maybe not as well as everywhere else, but certainly countries in the region seem to be taking it seriously, and there are no protests about opening back up the country that I am aware of. Whereas in the US, the location with the highest number of infections in the world and the highest number of deaths in the world, where, for example, in California, the number of cases is increasing. They are unfortunately opening back up the economy, because of overwhelming pressure from people. And I can't see how that can end well. I can't see that something that China and South Korea and Taiwan and Singapore and Vietnam and all of these countries that, were threatened by SARS, that they are taking so seriously, can be handled in the same way by the US without a horribly awful outcome. And, just simply to put it into as simple words as possible, you can't choke the medical system by having a glut of people infected and dying at the same time. That's what it amounts to with respect to flattening the curve. And certainly, at least in US, it isn't an exponential growth anymore at the moment. But when you're opening back up the country and you haven't even suppressed the infection rate, I mean, South Korea right now, they had 67, I think, new cases in South Korea, and they decided to reclose schools that they had opened. 67 new cases. I think the US had 29,000 daily new cases. I mean, that is not even comparable. If you compare the population of South Korea, which is about 50 million, to the US, 6 times as much, and South Korea is closing their schools because of 67 cases. So basically, if the US had 360 cases, they should have done something similar to South Korea. And the US doesn't have 360 cases. They have like 29,000 new cases every day. So, in respect to how this is going to work out for the US as compared to who's going to come out to this shining and stronger, this might be where we see an inflection point, and we see that the US really drops in the world. Certainly, they're going to still have the highest GDP for, the foreseeable future. But that, when you get a shock to your economy, like the one that seems to be coming, who knows where that's going to end up. So anyway, guys, you can wish me luck, so you can like, unlike, you can comment, subscribe, and or share. Peace.